On today's show, Baseball Prospectus's annual tradition, the PECOTA rankings. And let me tell you, they hate the San Diego Padres for 2024. Breaking that down, what it says about the team going forward, comparing it to past years' PECOTA projections, and much more. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Padres, your daily San Diego Padres podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Padres podcast, which is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for Tuesday, February 6th. As always, I'm your host with sometimes, occasionally, but certainly not always the most, Javier Reyes. You can follow me on Twitter at Javipeno, Javiipeno, or at LO_Padres if you want only Padres stuff, or to see my wicked hairdo, to see Pac-Man, to see Tatis. You can check out the YouTube Locked On Padres on the old tube. Be sure to subscribe. We're heating things up over here. We're finally back in full season mode, 5 days a week. Got you covered. Got all the content. We're here for you, man. We're here for you at Locked On Padres. And I will tell you, what's not here for you Padres fans today is the PECOTA projections, which we're going to be talking about today because, don't get me wrong, we're in the offseason, so this is just kind of what you should expect, is that any sort of news that could be tied to the Padres, we will discuss, because there's not much. It's been a really quiet offseason, not just by Padres standards, but by MLB standards, especially as of late. I think the past few years have spoiled us. A lot of free agents, a lot of trades. While this year, I think it's been a pretty weak free agent class overall, and it was really just carried by the fact that for the first 3 weeks of free agency, we were all just talking about Shohei Ohtani for the longest time. I'm not saying that these players can't be good. It's just, it seems like it's a pretty weak free agent class, especially compared to the past couple of years. So that's just where we're at. And the projections are out. And granted, these projections aren't foolproof, which we will talk about, and we'll compare them to past years. But there's still an interesting barometer, an interesting thing to look at, because Baseball Prospectus does good work. And I said, the first episode I did of this podcast, I said, look, the key to life, I believe, when you're kind of dumb like me, is to listen and align yourself with smart people. And I think that's what the people over at Baseball Prospectus are. So we're going to be talking about that. And I think that it's also worth noting that the Padres still don't have their 40-man roster still filled out. There's definitely some more moves to be made. I don't think that it'll be a move for, Cody Bellinger or anything like that, but it still is probably a move that might iron out some things, maybe get them a little bit higher in these projections. I don't know. But there's still more. So don't go all doom and gloom, guys. It's gonna be an interesting episode though. Today's episode though is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers, join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Let's get started, ladies and gentlemen. The projections came out. I actually woke up to them, hilariously enough, because that's just what you do when you cover a baseball team. You just wake up to numbers. That's actually what happens every time. It's crazy. I feel like, it's like that scene in Queen's Gambit when she sees the chessboard on the ceiling or whatever, except for me, it's like I just see numbers and WAR and OBP and, home run. That's all I see, actually, when I go to sleep and when I wake up. But no, in all seriousness, the projections came out this morning. And for the record, PECOTA, if you're wondering, it stands for Player Empirical Comparison and Optimization Test Algorithm. So not the nicest and most satisfying, what's that called? What are these things called? When you have the words? I'm blanking, man. This is what happens when you record live. Whatever, I'll think about it as we keep talking. That's what it stands for. It's not the easiest thing to roll off the tongue, which makes sense. For the Padres and for the rest of the National League West, PECOTA has the Los Angeles Dodgers sim wins at 101.1, the Arizona Diamondbacks at 85.2, the San Francisco Giants at 81, straight 81, and then the San Diego Padres at 79.7. Wowza, ladies and gentlemen. Here we are, folks. This is where we're at, right? And here's the funny thing. Again, these are just projections, and what I love about these projections and what I love about projections in general is that whenever they are in support of your team, you're like, yeah, these are really helpful. And then whenever you're not, you just dismiss them and be like, yeah, whatever, statisticians basically just tell us something may or may not happen. Yeah, okay, whatever, we get it. You know what I mean? I just find that so funny, and that's what we're hopefully take that energy with this. I do not think that the placement of the Padres, unfortunately, is all that crazy. I'm bullish on the Padres for this year. I think that they have, as I talked about in yesterday's episode, some interesting like Ewing theory potential with losing literally the best player in each part of their team, from bullpen to batting to starting pitching. I think that that's interesting, and I do that they think that they've done a pretty good job building out a more fleshed out roster, even if they have sacrificed Juan Soto, even if it's a team that lost Josh Hader despite a weird bullpen last year and losing its best player, and then with Blake Snell, who is still not signed, which is, I don't even have time to get into that. I can't stand baseball sometimes. But see, he still hasn't been signed, and he was the best pitcher for the Padres last year. So I think that these projections are very, very fair if you're looking at it like that. If you're someone and if you're the computer, you're saying, all right, this is a team that won 81 games last year, and they're losing cumulatively about like 10, 11 wins above replacement, maybe. Hader's about like 2. Soto, I believe, was about like 5.8 last year, and then Snell was probably in the 4s or something like that. Like around that, I can understand projections and everyone being like, well, obviously they're going to be bad. I think that that's fair, but for me, I think that this goes back to what I've been saying all offseason, which is that the big reason the Padres only won 81 games is because they were just so abnormally bad in every single clutch, high leverage situation. Manny Machado was really awful this year. Xander Bogaerts was one of the worst clutch players in baseball. I believe he was the 19th worst among all position players with runners in scoring position. Or he was in like that first page when you look up like splits leaderboards on Fangraphs, and I think that he was high up there in high leverage. Trent Grisham was heinous. You know what I mean? And that makes you wonder, okay, I think purely by just getting luckier and having regular luck, if they just go 500 in one-run games, if they just go 500 in extra innings games, then the team makes the playoffs very easily. I think that, I forgot what it's called, Pythagorean wins or whatever, on Baseball Reference, that the Padres last year had one of the greatest differences between projected, based on everything they had done, how their players had played, versus their actual ranking. They had literally one of the largest discrepancies of any team. And I think that these rankings are fair, but I really do think that they're not taking into account that teams tend to not be this abnormally not clutch year to year. Now, again, I do get it, though, in a sense that, like, look, but they're losing Soto, who was the one player that, like, it was him, Kim, and Tatis were, like, the only players that could occasionally show up when it mattered. And that's where they're at, right? So I don't hate these projections. You shouldn't either. I think that the Giants is a weird team to project always because they almost always seem to outperform the fact that they basically haven't had a star-level player in a long time. But they always are relatively competitive. They have great pitching. They usually develop a decent bullpen. And they added Jung-Ho Lee, right? And they might add even more. I wouldn't rule them out entirely for some other big free agents or even another big trade. I wouldn't rule them out of because the Giants just tend to be very quiet. You know what I mean? You don't really know what they're going to do until they do it. So that's what I'm saying on that. But even still, I have no doubt in my mind that the Padres can be better than the Giants. I have no doubt in my mind that they can be better than the Diamondbacks. The only thing that is a lock is the Dodgers ranking here. I'm actually surprised they only put them at 101. I think that they deserved like a 103 or 104 because this is a team that won, if I'm not mistaken, this past season. Let me see really quickly. And I know this is like, it's a cautionary tale because this is how people evaluated the Padres heading into this past season, where they were like, this is a team that made the NLCS and added Xander Bogaerts. So like, how can they be projected worse? That's different in this case though, because I'm just talking about their wins. Projecting the Dodgers to win the World Series is kind of pointless, right? Because they choke every year. So that's different, though. That's not what these rankings are about. The Dodgers won 100 games last year, and that is without Ohtani at DH. That is without Yoshinobu Yamamoto as one of their pitchers. That is without Walker Buehler, who's projected to come back, who's very, very good. That is without the addition of Teoscar Hernandez. That is without and Tyler Glass now as a starting pitcher. It's ridiculous what they did. So I think 101 is actually kind of low for them. They do have the highest projected win total on PECOTA right now at 101.1, but it's like a nitpick. I think it should have been higher, frankly. Not to get too Dodger loving on this podcast, but we're going to keep talking about this, giving some more reactions and some more takes as we go along here. But, ladies and gentlemen, I need to take a second to talk to you about something very important. And it's been a while since we've talked about them. It's true. It's been a long time. It's been a long time since we've heard from them. It's the folks over at eBay, ladies and gentlemen. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes it's not just about getting Tatis and Bogarts on your team. Sometimes it's about getting to the damn ballpark. You know what I mean? That's what eBay Motors is there to help you out for. They have everything you need to manage your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered with over 122 million parts. Wow. That's a lot. For your number one ride today, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. That's right. Yeah, you might have got intimidated there with the 122 million. Guess what? They've got you covered, though. They'll figure it out. They'll tell you what works for your car. That's right. You that's watching or you're listening. Don't worry. Don't be intimidated, because I know nothing about cars either. And eBay Motors is here to help with that. You're burning rubber, not cash, with eBay Motors, ladies and gentlemen. With all the parts you need and all the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available in U.S. customers. Go check it out. And just like that, we are back, ladies and gentlemen, here on the Locked On Padres podcast. Hopefully everyone is doing very well on this lovely Tuesday morning. As we, if you're randomly, if you're on the East Coast like me, you're a little bit happy that the craziness of the winds of winter haven't totally been ravaging you lately, and we've got a little bit of a break. And if you're on the West Coast, then stay happy and sunshiny or whatever, you dorks. Anyway, with the PECOTA projections, I think that I'm going to be talking about this tomorrow. I'm going to be talking about Ha-Seong Kim. And I think that while the rankings and projections all like a lot of the players for the Padres, I'm really starting to wonder if like trading Ha-Seong Kim has become a necessity, because I think that he might have peaked offensively. And I think he's a good player. I think that this is a dude who, at worst, could just be like an Andrelton Simmons, where like he could be an excellent fielder who will pop in and out with some decent, offense. I think he has more power than Andrelton Simmons had, but I'm just giving an example of a comp for a player. Like, that's not bad. I'm just saying that this is a team that has a lot of other areas to improve in, particularly on the pitching side of things. Might be some bullpen moves to make, might be some starting pitching moves to make, or I think that this is a team that may look to try and get something out of Jake Cronenworth. That's what I'm saying. And I think that Kim might have peaked offensively. And I'm wondering, based on these projections, do we think, yeah, maybe they need to view this as your core is Darvish, Musgrove, Tatis, Bogarts, Manny. A core that I will fight to the ends of the earth in believing and saying they can absolutely be what it takes as a core. Out of all of them, I'm the most worried about Machado, frankly. I've said this before. I think that Machado is just... I just don't like some of the numbers on him last year. Don't get me wrong. He still can hit the ball hard and whatnot, but I was just a little bit worried. The injury makes a lot of his season look a little bit like, okay, maybe he was just kind of hurt, and that's why he was down last year. Because, hey, also surprisingly, Nolan Arenado for the Cardinals, our arch nemesis, he was down last year. And I don't think anyone expects that necessarily to continue this next year. So if Machado is like only a 3.5 win player for a long time, that's good, but it's not what you paid for. You're at least hoping that at the beginning of this contract, you were going to get some of those MVP seasons, maybe a couple, maybe one or two of those seasons in that deal. And if you're not, then that's not great news for the Padres, because they're a very top-heavy team. And if that doesn't happen, though, even still, you have Tatis, who I think is going to be an MVP candidate this year. I think everyone does. I just think if you combine the defense with the fact that he got a little bit unlucky with his hard hit stuff last year, the fact that he was coming off the injury and a year suspension, or half a season suspension, you get my point, and technically injured for the other part of it, that if you take that all into account, Tatis is like a 7-win player potentially. And if you get that, that is huge. And then everyone else just has to be a little bit better. And then Bogarts, as long as he just hits better with runners on base, like his WAR ranking of 4.4 last year was pretty good. And everyone loves Trey Turner, but Xander Bogaerts had a higher F WAR. That's just because Trey Turner had like the most unreal end to his season, while Bogarts had like the lowest of lows at points. You know what I mean? Where it was just actively like watching him hit was painful. It looked like he couldn't swing properly. So that's just that. And hopefully with the unveiling of new, more tech-oriented analytic facilities and training facilities and labs and stuff like that the Padres recently announced, maybe they'll be able to help out their players from staving off these type of slumps in the future. But with their projections, I also found that the projections for the Diamondbacks are really tough for me to evaluate. I don't know how to feel about that team. I don't know how to feel about Eduardo Rodriguez. I think he's good, and I think it's awesome just for baseball's sake that they decided to go out and spend a little bit, especially after making it to the World Series, which unfortunately there are a lot of teams in this league that don't do that. That I do like that, but I'm just wondering, like, what are you getting out of Eduardo Rodriguez? I'm not convinced that their rotation is going to be okay the full way through. And I know, sounds like throwing stones from glass houses when it comes to the Padres rotation, but that's just me. Some other things worth mentioning. Past projections, guys. Duh. Okay. Let's talk about how PECOTA fared when it came to previous seasons and their projections, right? So this past season, I believe, let me see if it was this past season, 2023. Projecting for this last season in 2023, PECOTA had, in order, the Dodgers winning 89 games, the Padres winning 88, Giants winning 80, Diamondbacks winning 79, Rockies winning 77. What ended up happening was the Dodgers won 100, the Diamondbacks won 84, the Padres won 82, very infamously, Giants won 79, and then the Rockies won 59. The one thing I will say, PECOTA has the Rockies at 58 wins. Just for if you're just curious, I'm not a betting man all the time myself, but I would bet a little bit on the Rockies to reach that over, because I think that that's way too low, and I think that they're getting Cody Bellinger, and I think that they can get 1 year out of Bryant. I think Ezequiel Tovar can be okay. They're getting Brendan Rodgers back. I think they could be a team that wins like 62, 63, just purely based on having like an above average offense. And maybe a couple fielders in there like Ryan McMahon. Their pitching is a disaster, don't get me wrong, but I don't think they'll be that bad. And again, I think that the reason why I bet on it now is because I really think that they might get Cody Bellinger. I think that's such a Rockies move to go after that guy. So that's how it panned out last year. These rankings were really low on the Dodgers, and they were really low on the Dodgers because they said, well, they didn't do much. They just added some like utility bench players. They added Jason Hayward. They added JD Martinez, right? And PECOTA didn't like them. So that just shows you already, like, PECOTA's, it's not perfect, guys. So don't freak out. The Padres are kind of the same, right? Where the Dodgers last year, they headed into the season being like, you lose Trey Turner, right? They had lost Corey Seager the previous year, and the same thing happened, yet PECOTA didn't believe in them. And instead, they built out the edges of their team, had a decent bullpen, starting pitching was okay, they had some guys come up, and then some people in the lineup, like the aforementioned Martinez and Hayward, stepped up for them. Why can't that be the Padres? The Padres lost Soto, and they lost Hader, and they lost Snell, but the Dodgers lost a bunch of stuff, so the Padres have replaced it with depth. You have Michael King, you have Randy Vasquez, you have Johnny Brito, you've got an interesting farm system with some young guys. Maybe Jacob Marcy can come up and be exciting, the same way that James Outman for the Dodgers was the surprise, like, Rookie of the Year candidate last year. Why not us? The reason is because people don't like the Padres organization doesn't have that track record. But I'm just saying, I'm just giving some possibilities. You know what I mean? And that was 2023. And then, let me see if I can pull up really quickly 2022. 2022's projections. Very infamously, for the Padres, they project... Oh, wait, is this 2022? Let me see real quick. No, something's wrong here. Padres, I'm looking at the score right now. Yeah, okay. The Padres' projected wins for last year, according to PECOTA, were 91. That actually matched, right? It was projected for the Dodgers to win 98, the Padres to win 91, Giants to win 78, Arizona Diamondbacks to win 72, and then the Rockies to win 68. That one was extremely accurate. The Dodgers finished first. They won a bunch more games than they were projected to at 111. The Padres finished at 89 wins, and then the Giants finished at 78. Or I'm sorry, they finished at 81, and then they had projected 78. And then Diamondbacks finished at 74 compared to their projection of 72. And then Rockies were exact at 68. So it was pretty on board with the Padres, and I think that it's interesting. What was one thing that happened for the Padres heading into 2022? It was like, oh God, no Tatis. You know, they're screwed. They didn't add anything this offseason, and the projections still like them. I think that they like them. So think of it that way. Think of it as, look, no one kind of counting on the Padres just over the past few years has resulted in better seasons. And in fact, I could bring that back to 2019. 2019 expectations were a lot higher. You have Tatis called up for opening day. You have Manny Machado. Projections were a lot higher. People were more excited about them than they're bad. 2020, same sort of thing. I know it was shortened by COVID and whatnot, but even still, people were down on the Padres because of what happened in 2019. Then what happened? They were great. Then they do Darvish and Snell and Hassan Kim in that whole offseason, and then they have the collapse in 2021. So people are down on them for 2022, and then they actually make the playoffs in the NLCS that year, and then trade for Juan Soto. So it just seems like every time that people are counting out the Padres, and I know that this is a more esoteric sort of philosophical based reasoning for why I'm bullish on the Padres, but screw it, I'm in on them. Every time people seem to be down on them or not as excited, the juice doesn't seem to be with them, they do a lot better. And as these rankings suggest, that seems to have been what happened. And then if you want to go back to 2021 when the big core four, what I still have that Padres shirt of the Slam Diego, and it shows Hosmer, Myers, and Tatis and Machado. For that year, the projections had the Dodgers at 103 wins, the Padres at 96 wins, D-backs at 79, Giants at 75, Rockies at 60. And of course, this is probably the most wildly off PECOTA had been. And that is the Dodgers, they did finish with 106 wins, so they matched kind of what they were projected for. But then the Giants outperformed by like 34 wins. What is that? 31 win difference between their projections, finishing with 107 and winning the division. Padres infamously finishing with 79, and then Rockies 74, and Diamondbacks 52. I forgot how bad the Diamondbacks were. They were like abnormally bad that year. I totally forgot about that. Pretty crazy that just 2 years later they make the World Series, right? Keep that in mind, guys. So again, these things are not perfect. They just aren't. But just to give you an illustration of why I'm still a little bit bullish on them. I think the projections are fair. I think based on what the Padres have done, they're fair. But keep in mind everything that I said about counting them out. And speaking of counting them out, ladies and gentlemen, don't count out my boy Isaiah Pacheco on Sunday. I know he had a mid-game last week against the Ravens, but the Ravens are a good team, so don't count him out. And if you want to make a bet on the old Super Bowl that is happening this week, America's #1 sportsbook has you covered. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring, the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets, ladies and gentlemen. Here, I already said, I'm hammering the over on Isaiah Pacheco. I'm big on Christian McCaffrey. I think we got some run game happening on Sunday. That's what I think is going to happen. But if you don't, well, there's all these sort of prop bets. I bet you FanDuel's got all sort of weird prop bets. The Gatorade color, the how long does the national anthem last. There's always those fun things too, but they've also got you with just scores that are going to happen, specific players who's going to score a touchdown, how many points will be scored in total, and so much more. Ladies and gentlemen, they are awesome. We love FanDuel. We love them. We love them. We love them so much more. New customers join today and you'll get 200 buckaroos. That's right, $200, guys, in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. You just got to put up 5 to win 200. Pretty good deal, right? Oh, I know. You're salivating at it as we speak. I can tell. I sense it. You guys have it. I'm not actually talking to anyone right now. This is pre-recorded, but I can tell through my screen and through my microphone. You're all dying for that bet. Well, guess what? All you have to do is visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. It's just as simple as that. Just for listening to my podcast, we bless you with these offers, ladies and gentlemen. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And just like that, ladies and gentlemen, we are back here on the Locked On Padres podcast, just finishing things up, wrapping things up in a nice little bow about these PECOTA projections. Hopefully you have enjoyed some other things I wanted to talk about that I thought were notable, just in terms of these projections that I thought stood out a little bit. Other teams, they have the Yankees winning their division, if you guys are curious, since I have the Yankee fan allegations. Minnesota Twins winning their division at 88 wins. Sounds about right. Although I wouldn't sleep on the the Guardians again, or the Tigers, frankly. Houston, they've got winning, and they've got Houston winning their division comfortably, which I think is weird, although I do understand it because the Rangers have a bunch of injuries to deal with Scherzer and DeGrom, missing the early part of the season, if not more than the early part of the season. I get it. But the Rangers will still be very good. Mariners are a weird one, 84 wins projected. And then Angels, obviously, 74. And then the poor Oakland A's at 64 wins. Wherever they end up, by the way. I don't know what's going on in Oakland and all that stuff, but billionaires are bad when it comes to baseball teams sometimes, let me tell you. And at least they've got Atlanta and Philly at 84. Philly is such a weird team because that team hates defense, yet the projections still tend to like them. I just think that they know that the Phillies can turn it on. Phillies are a little bit of a streaky type offense where like they might just explode for 20 runs in 2 days, if not more, and just completely blow everybody off the map for like 2 weeks. And even when the come down happens, it'll be like, well, it didn't matter. We won like 8 straight. I just think they're one of those teams that gets hot fast, especially considering they'll have Harper, for most of the season. I think they're expecting Trey Turner to be not necessarily what he was in August and September, but just to be closer to what he ended up being, right? Like he's going to be a better player this year. I'm rooting against him personally because he declined joining the Padres. So we got to root against him, guys, in a sports way. Sports hate, not real hate. Don't hate the man. Don't send him bad message. I'm saying sports hate. Like, argh, you know what I mean? Not like a playful thing. You know what I mean? Don't be mean. Don't be mean to these guys. And then for the NL Central is a fascinating division to me. They've got the Cardinals, who were one of the I just explained 2021 how off it was on the Giants. It was super off on the Cardinals for this past year. Obviously, in fairness, everyone was, right? The PECOTA projections had them at 87 wins last year. Then the Brewers at 83, Cubs at 78, Pirates at 73, Reds at 73. And this year, they've got the Cardinals at 85, Chicago at 80, Milwaukee at 78, Cincinnati at 78, Pittsburgh at 73. And again, the standings, like the Cardinals were so bad this past year. I think a lot of people I think people might be bullish on them because they just don't understand how you went to 71 wins. That's just so crazy. But I don't know. I don't know if there's something about this team that's all that exciting, frankly. I don't really know what they've done to excite people. Now, don't get me wrong. They did get some stuff, right? They got Sonny Gray, got Kyle Gibson. They have Lance Lynn now. They have at least finally, it took them long enough to finally invest in pitching. But my thing is, we don't know for sure how guys like Nolan Gorman are going to turn out. We don't know for sure how guys like Tommy Edman will play throughout the rest of the season. Dylan Carlson, famously, who they didn't want to give up for Soto. Jordan Walker, another one. I still like this Cardinals team. I think that they're another bounce back type team because they were just so bad last year that it doesn't fit the roster that they have. I think that you should expect them to bounce back. I'm a little bit surprised though that they're so down on Cincy because Cincy is like, I don't know. Cincinnati like got stuff. Like they got Frankie Montas. They have another, Lodolo, Green, Ashcraft are all going to get better. They got our boy Nick Martinez, so we're rooting for them. Ellie De La Cruz, his second year, still a top level prospect. They've got a lot of stuff there, so I'm surprised that they've only got them at 78 wins. That's not super low though, in fairness. You know what I mean? It's just a little bit surprising that they have them finishing below Milwaukee. I get it. Milwaukee is one of those teams that also, similar to the Giants, tends to outplay the fact that nobody knows who really any of their players are. But my thing is, I know they just got Rhys Hoskins, but I think that they're selling, or at least they're half selling. And right now they have Freddie Peralta, Wade Miley as their top 2 pitchers. I don't see it happening again. I just don't see it. I don't understand how this is a team that's going to be that much better. I know they have Jackson Chourio, who's one of the top 5 prospects in baseball, if not higher. Some people think he's the top one. I've seen that a couple times, or at least the second best one, along with Jackson Holliday of the Baltimore Orioles. So I get it, but to me, the biggest thing why you would bet the under on the Brewers is because they just traded, Corbin Burns. They're going to lose Brandon Woodruff. I just think, like this team, I think is in sell mode. I think because I don't think that there's anything on this team that suggests that they're ready to compete now. If they were, then I don't think they would have given up stuff. But Robert Gasser is projected to be like their 4th starter. Curious to see how he turns out. I was on the record and wrong that the Josh Hader trade was a disaster. my thinking on that was, as much as I make fun of the Brewers for never spending despite being really good and then getting trounced in the playoffs every year, and everyone's like, wow, why would this happen? It's because you don't have any stars. You keep neglecting that. I was worried because they tend to make really good trades, like pretty constantly. And I was worried, oh God, Taylor Rogers is going to figure it out. His xFIP is going to kick in. His expected ERA is going to kick in. And then Gasser is going to be amazing. And then Estuary Ruiz, same thing, who's now, I believe, on the A's, if I'm not mistaken. Is he? Where the heck is Estuary Ruiz? What happened to my guy? Is he on the A's? I thought he was. Whatever. So that would be my thing with the Brewers. I would just pay attention, because that trade, man, it so far is fine, but what's worse is the fact that the Padres didn't trade Josh Hader. Guys, you've seen some of the deals that have happened this offseason. You saw that, like, the exchange with Gregory Santa, whoever the Tigers just acquired or the White Sox just traded. You could have got something out of Blake Snell or Josh Hader. Frankly, the one that you definitely should have moved was Josh Hader, because that's a closer and that's a lot easier. And I just think, like, I just don't understand it. I still don't understand why they didn't move him, especially when they knew he wasn't going to put in the extra innings if it didn't look like they were a lock, a guarantee to make the playoffs. So I don't know what they were doing there. Not trading Josh Hader was another failure of last season. But yeah, I like the Reds a little bit this year. I'm not super bullish on them, though. I just don't know what to think. The Pirates could be weirdly decent this year, I think, too. That's a weird team, though. 73 wins. Last year they won 76. They'll have O'Neal Cruz back, which is good. But it's not like they have a lot of new stuff aside from that. I think that's why they're down on them. You know what I mean? Martin Perez is fine, whatever. But that's why they don't like them. Hey, if they can expect the Cardinals to bounce back, then why not the Padres? You know what I mean? That's kind of where I'm at. And I understand that the Cardinals didn't lose anything, and the Padres did. I get it. But to me, I just think that things can really improve for the Padres. And I think that while there's still a lot to be concerned about with this team, there's so much unknown. And I think that's good. I think it's kind of cool that the Padres don't have this roster that's set in stone this year. That, yeah, we don't really know what's going to happen in the outfield. Yeah, are we sure that Ha-Seong Kim is going to be on this team? We're going to be talking about that tomorrow. I really think that, and I know one of the things that people talk about is, oh, well, you can't get rid of Kim because Machado's out. Like, okay, you shouldn't use Machado being, let's say he misses a month from playing third base and he's playing DH. You can't use a month to justify not getting rid of someone who might help your future prospects and beyond just 1 month. So that's just how I feel about it. But ladies and gentlemen, after all, they are just projections, folks. They're just projections. It's okay. This is what we do when we're starved for baseball. I miss it. I really do. I miss the comfort. I miss the comfort of just being like, I don't have to have my own thoughts. You know what I mean? I don't want a single thought of my own entering my head. I want to be stimulated at all times. Baseball helps with that. And if you're like me, then you agree. So folks, that about does it for today's episode of the Locked On Padres podcast. The only pod that may be better than the Padres themselves. Remember to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. I'm curious to see what other moves the Padres may do for the rest of this offseason. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about trading Ha-Seong Kim because I'm in the mood to make everybody upset tomorrow because it is Wednesday after all, the hump day. Is hump day usually associated with annoying people? I don't know. I don't think so. Like it's an annoying day because it's a tough day because you're getting over the hump. But I don't know if it's known for being like intentionally obnoxious the way that I'm going to be tomorrow. I don't know. Let me know in the comments what you think. Going to be doing that tomorrow, and then going to be doing Padres X Factors, ranking the best Padres, some Padres moments, and shouts to our boy Trevor Hoffman. 51 days until opening day, folks. Very exciting times indeed. And also, feel free to leave comments in the YouTube. Feel free to tweet at me, DM me, whatever, for any questions you might want answered on the podcast, because Lord knows we've got a lot of material to cover and a lot of days to fill until opening day. But until next time, stay safe, and of course, stay faithful. My Fire Faithful homies, take care.